want to call to order this special called meeting of the Danville Board of Education. Thank everybody who's in the audience here for joining us today. The first item on our agenda is the District of Innovation Plan, and I will turn this over to Dr. Look.
If y'all don't mind, I'd rather be on the other side of the table, so
Sure.
talk to you guys and go from there. You've had a chance to preview the presentation. Appreciate everybody coming out to take a look as well. At any point in time, you're welcome to stop and holler questions as we go through. So don't worry about breaking flow. Mr. Gover, I'll try and stay in relative view because I figure out which way to look at any given time. Please don't take my ADD eye contact as any signal of anything other than trying to figure out the right places to look at the right time. So let's talk about innovation recalibration. This is essentially what we were challenged to do by the state of Kentucky. Even at the board meeting when it was originally talked about probation, the state board was very clear that they really just believed that that was a term they didn't like to use in this situation. Would prefer something that just simply revisits the work. So I want to do a little history, a little background, and then talk about where we've been to where we are, and then moving forward. So much of our innovation work begins with clear definitions, making sure we understand what the purposes are and where, in fact, we are defining those pieces. So at times I'll do a little reading to you, and at times I'll let you read for yourselves. But I'd like to put out there that the District of Innovation commits to supporting a culture of curiosity that flows through and from every structure and assemblage of a localized system of education, while engaging in a system of self-analysis to measure impact in relation to factors of audience, context, growth, and achievement. We had to boil that down to simpler terms. Roland Barthes talks about it as a high-risk, low-anxiety environment. We want folks to be confident to try stuff and fail, but that is okay because that, in fact, was what characterizes the kinds of risks and chances we want to take to push our limits of education. Recalibration, then, fits under this definition. And this was a definition that was shared with our staff at the beginning of the school year. It comes from Angela Lee Duckworth, who's become an expert on looking at issues of grit, or perseverance efforts within the school of growth mindset. And it talks about that that's the work that's before us. We need to take our best ideas, our strongest intuitions, and we need to test them. We need to measure whether we've been successful, and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. So keeping that in mind, if this is what we mean by a district of innovation, then recalibration has to be thinking about our best intuition, our best experiences, and figuring out their continuing impact. This goes back to our original goal of the executive plan for the innovation plan that was submitted in 2013. And I think in reading that, there isn't anyone in this room or beyond this room that would ever say that that is still not double negative that too many times. There is no one outside this room or even outside this district that would disagree with that statement as what a priority of any school district, especially ours, should be chasing. So not only paying attention to content knowledge, but a priority on essential skills cited as being critical to all post-secondary pathways. It's about content knowledge. It's also about a whole lot more. So to do that, we look at the original definition of innovation, we look at the definition of recalibration, and we look at the goal of our 2013 plan. And keep in mind, this is the next iteration. It is not a replacement. It is not a substitution. It is simply a continued definition of our work based upon where we've made experiences and where we're learning from. College readiness remains a core component of our innovation work. It is even defined within the Kentucky Innovation Learning Network as a key priority for any district that participates. And traditionally, it has been measured by the EPAS system. Explore in 8th grade, Plan in 10th grade, ACT in 11th grade. And this was a dominant piece of our original innovation plan as a way in which we'd be measuring our own progress. ACT no longer offers the Explore and the Plan. They are dead and gone. So in that, there is a prerequisite upon us to figure out how do we continue to measure our student success and the progress and benchmarks they're making to that point. ACT is still in place, but as far as writing new Explore plans or new plan tests, so forth, they don't exist anymore. Need to give a little conversation and context around benchmarks, because that's what college readiness is defined by. Now here's the sometimes odd one. When we talk about college readiness benchmarks, whether using the original definitions that were put forth by the Council of Chief State School Officers, the collaborations that worked on the Common Core, the folks who developed the Kentucky Core Academic Standards, so forth, it all comes down to the same definition of the ability to survive entry-level courses in college. That is the definition of college readiness. Some might say it's at this standard of success to that level, some might define it otherwise, but that is the college readiness definition. And in Kentucky, this is an article that out of the Courier been following the conversation on ACT, that simply reminds us that while ACT sets its own college benchmarks, Kentucky has modified that just a bit to look at local readiness benchmarks. This gets us into the weeds a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I just want folks to make sure they have the context of what college readiness is set to mean. So here's the big chart that explains it. When the ACT sets its benchmarks, you see that on the left, the English composition, the benchmark is an 18, 22, 22, 23, going down the list. This is a predictor, according to ACT, right up front of their website, is the percentage chance of a student receiving a B or higher in the entry-level college course. You hit the benchmark, you have a, could be wrong on this one, 75% chance of receiving a B, no, excuse me, 50% chance of receiving a C, no, 75% of a C, 50% of a B. College readiness benchmark. In Kentucky, you see that English composition stayed the same, social science was a couple points lower, college algebra a few points lower. Whole point is that we're still defining college readiness by what it takes to be successful in one's first year of college freshman entry-level courses. We had used Explore and Plan to help us know along the way how students were progressing towards meeting these benchmarks. Without it, we have to figure out what other tools we have available to continue this pursuit of making sure our kids are college ready and essentially being able to celebrate their work or intervene early. The Northwest Evaluation Association has a test called MAP. It's the Measures of Academic Progress. We have been using this test twice a year as formative assessment, grades K through 8, fall and spring, fall and spring, fall and spring. We are now able to determine that this is in fact a valid predictor of ACT performance. We haven't used it this way before. So where that comes from is a study by Thinker and Johnson that first started in 2012. And I gotta say, this chart honestly scares me as much as it pleases me to have it. But in their research, they were able to correlate MAP scores to ACT all the way back to 3rd grade. And while this is really small print, just to tell you what's here, you have 3 columns. So this is on the reading. If a 3rd grader in the fall takes the MAP and scores a 179, they are predicted an ACT score of 16. If they are at a 221, they are predicted at an ACT score of 32. This is the column for math, and it goes grade 3, fall, spring, grade 4, fall, spring, all the way through. I gotta say my initial inclination was to want to burn it, because I would hate to think that by 3rd grade some of the things are that much determined. But at the same point in time, there is some valid research behind this. I was actually able to validate the quality of the researcher involved through a series of connections to make sure that his work was legitimate. Even better, the folks at NWEA validated their own work themselves this summer. As of June 29th of 2015, they released their study of ACT correlations. And while they set their benchmarks within percentiles and ranges that are sometimes a little different than ACT, again, they were able to say that yes, our math assessments are valid predictors of the ACT. So even without the Explore and the Plan, we have good data and can use it accordingly. What comes, though, from a lot of the analysis of the AT is the emphasis to expand our focus a bit. And according to the ACT, the greatest predictor of students meeting benchmarks, high school to get into college, is actually by the extent to which 8th grade students are on track for college-ready work. And the statement in the white box is probably the most important. Scary as well from a pressure standpoint, but it says the level of academic achievement students attain by 8th grade has a larger impact on their college and career readiness by the time they graduate high school than anything that happens academically in high school. That's deep. It was a study that they conducted in 2008. They revisited it again in 2014 and came to the same conclusions. Now, ACT has a real incentive to make these kind of conclusions because they're in a business to be able to sell us more tools to address this work. So we have to find other sources that help us inform us. Now, to get to that point in a minute, when the ACT did their work, they recognized it wasn't just about the academic achievement, which was the Explore benchmarks, but also a series of behaviors that made it more likely for students to do well in those measures. And that included issues of academic discipline, orderly conduct, and positive relationships with school personnel. More often than not, it's the third in that list that folks don't always think about, and has been a focus of Bate Middle School and continues to be something of a district, especially of our size, where relationships matter and we can make that impact exponentially greater because of that size factor. Now, back to the importance of 8th grade. The Harvard Strategic Data Project, in partnership with Kentucky, just released, as in 10 days ago, significant data that was tracking rates of student high school graduation college enrollment, and college persistence. And in all of their data, they tracked a significant data point back to 8th grade math performance. That was the greatest predictor that they found in correlation. So again, the focus on 8th grade, where kids are by 8th grade, is something that we need to take a serious look at in the work as far as measuring our impact of innovation and how we plan our interventions and strategic strategies accordingly. This chart you can't read. I don't think I did that intentionally. But what it is that you have 4 districts up here to show the kind of data that came from the project. And it's got Danville, Boyle, Trigg County, because we've done a lot of, Trigg is another district of innovation, so we wanted to kind of see where they were at. And then Glasgow is up here as well. I choose Glasgow because if you ever talk to Susan Weston, the district that she says ought to be most comparable to Danville is Glasgow. And I've not done enough research to argue with Susan Weston, and you know that you don't argue with Susan Weston unless you've done your research, so Glasgow's on the chart. But what you see up here are data that says average 8th grade performance, where the college enrollment looks like, and the college persistence that stays behind it. Point is, this data exists just recently, as in 10 days ago, and again, tracks back to the importance of performance by 8th grade. So the bottom line, without the Explorer or introducing new or more tests, we can anticipate college readiness and plan opportunities and interventions accordingly across K-12 through 12. This is where, in performance standpoint, you drop the mic and walk away, because rarely is that ever the statement that comes from a district that we don't actually need new or more tests to continue to do really high quality work. And without more testing, or even new testing, we can measure student growth, which is also a bit of an accentuation of focus, to not only worry about a single benchmark that kids must attain, but the progress students are making in getting towards that benchmark. And if you talk with teachers, that's really what we feel most valued about, is how far our students are able to progress in a year, no matter what an endpoint might be. So let's look at it. Innovation in education is much more about student growth than it is about reaching a fixed endpoint. In fact, Tony Wagner, who is a leader in national conversations on innovation, just published a book that blasts the ACT and what it measures. Granted, he blasted about everything in that book. But again, shows us as we try and figure out our focus, we need to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball, which is how much our students are progressing through our system of education. If you ever wonder what student growth looks like, this is it. It's the best map I can come up with. In the current system of education, in Kentucky and many other places, there is a line of proficiency. And the whole goal of any district is to have students cross the line. And in a chart like this, in the current system of education, we would say that this student has done phenomenal work because he or she has crossed the proficiency line. Whereas the teacher of this child, who has obviously done amazing work to make progress from here to here, gets no credit and no points. And a parent still gets a letter saying your child still isn't proficient. But from a growth standpoint, we would say that this is exceptional work. This probably is pretty good work. And how can we do more of this to impact more students? So with a growth mindset, we can start paying attention to the impact of curriculum. How are our programs working? What are the instructional strategies seem to have the most impact with what kinds of students? Which students are growing the most, the least, in what areas, and why? It's those kinds of questions that keep us always curious about the quality of our work and where it takes us. And again, without the ACT or introducing new or more tests, we actually can measure student growth. There are 2 major statistical companies in the United States. One is called SAS and one is called SPSS. SAS has an offshoot called EVOS, used in 18 states, not in Kentucky yet, that will take our data and be able to give us more informed measures of the progress our students are making, student by student. Again, no more work on teachers, no more work on schools, using the data we already have to then be able to say more clearly, here's the progress your kid is making as they are progressing through the Danville school system. This is going to be the t-shirts we print up. Yes, that's less testing and better information. So student growth. By focusing on growth, we have a stronger, more strategic impact on assisting students. By focusing on growth, we can build on students' strengths rather than always reinforcing weaknesses. And lastly, on growth, the district can inspire a teacher to move all students as opposed to those just close to the proficiency line. There is that twisted incentive to only focus on the bubble kids, the kids just below the line. This gives us an opportunity to say, not only do we say all kids matter, but measures that show in real terms why we think that is a priority. In a growth mindset, ability is not fixed. Strength is, we look to play the kids to what they are good at, same thing with adults. And it's a key characteristic of the applied positive psychology cohort that we've been working on all year within a group of leadership folks in the district ranging from clerk to superintendent. And it begins, of any level of growth, is identifying clearly what students should know and be able to do. As the talk about what students should know and be able to do, you're talking about standards. Within the district, there's been some debate as to what we are supposed to be focusing on or teaching to. And quite clearly, we want to say that every teacher in this district and every school in this district should be focused on teaching the standards, the Kentucky core academic standards. Do not teach to a test. Our Kentucky core academic standards are aligned with the Common Core standards. We were the first state in the country to adopt the Common Core standards. We were deeply involved in their conversation and in their development, and remains the priority for us. Key thing about standards is that standards do not say how to teach. They only say what the standard is. So it is still the responsibility of schools, of teachers, of principals, of leadership, to create engaging and meaningful learning opportunities that allow students to show what they know and are able to do in any series of forms or fashions that best represent the ability of that child. We also want to develop within students their identities as responsible local and global citizens, self-motivated learners, and key communicators. You do see the asterisk at the bottom. To be quite clear, there are a couple times in which the KCAS standards really can't be a priority. In an advanced placement class offered at high schools, those curricula are set. You are not allowed to be an AP teacher and vary from that curriculum no matter what state you're in, because it has to be exactly the same, whether you're New Mexico, Utah, Kentucky, Mississippi. And we have a series of end-of-course exams, only 4, that every student must pass through high school, and those are aligned to our ACT Quality Core exam standards. And the ACT Quality Core was also part of the whole conversation around Common Core, so we're all still talking very much about the same thing. It's essentially the same things, just, again, taking us in the weeds just a bit to clarify. When it comes to standards, this is why we want to make this communication clear. Every parent should know what standards are being taught in a given class, the order of their instruction, and the level of competency a student plays on each standard. It's not just about sending a kid home with a test score or an essay grade that says, you got a B+. Knowing what that B+ represents, whether it's about composition, grammar, alignment, author's purpose, voice, so forth, is a much more detailed analysis that gives any parent, much less student, much greater information on the kinds of things they're doing well at and where other growth can occur. And standards, as I said, in and of themselves do not dictate the mode of instruction. Rather, we wish to empower teachers to facilitate the process of any given standard in the manner that best suits teacher capacity, student ability, and student interest. When we talk about focusing on standards, the elementaries have made significant efforts at this in this past, 4 months. We purchased a system called Mastery Connect for the elementary grades that allows us to map standards, and they have laid them out in reading, math, and writing, and we'll be able to tell at any given moment to any given parent, here's the standard, and here's how your student is doing as far as progressing to competency on that standard. And we have the opportunity to explore similar options for middle and high. Let's talk about beyond standards in the Danville diploma. In this recalibration, students will be able to identify and demonstrate diploma skills by the end of 5th grade and again by the end of 8th grade. Elementary and middle both will develop individualized school plans for Danville diploma skill implementation. And the attainment of those standards will be logged in Master Connect in the elementary and a tool to be identified for the middle school. This shows some of the work that's already been done. Our elementary and middle school folk have taken every one of the Danville diploma skills, this is only a brief snapshot of them, and said very clearly, for this skill, this is what it looks like in primary grades, this is what it looks like in intermediate grades, and this is what it looks like in middle school. Making it easier for teachers, parents, and students to get their heads around the work and what it means to be able to demonstrate what are soft skills and still continuing to be discussed and evolved within a national conversation. It actually started in 2000 with the scans report. The high school has a bit of a different task, moving again to a strength-based approach. In our Danville diploma, we spent a lot of time focusing on the first component, which is the 10 skills. There are many other pieces of the Danville diploma that deserve our attention. The high school will take that duty and focus on components 2 through 10 to establish clear guidelines and expectations. We want the high school advisors to be able to track the work of the students, demonstrating their level of attainment in those components. And ultimately, to develop a scaffolded process where folks can get these things done, so that by graduation, a student will be able to demonstrate his or her package of Danville diploma effectiveness and potentially earn a special core that exemplifies having earned the Danville diploma. So again, 5th and 8th are taking the first piece, high school takes 2 through 10, in a unique way of establishing a series of patterns and experiences for students to be able to, again, earn the Danville diploma, and we'd be able to clearly define what that achievement has been. Personalized learning. you start to see school by school, and this is how the rest of the presentation kind of runs. We have topics and kind of what it looks like in elementary, middle, and high. Elementary school, we're able to personalize through differentiated instruction and flexible grouping and fluid scheduling that allows us to tailor our instruction to the individual student. The middle school and the high school, both looking at differentiated instruction, and it's what we've invested in with professional development with the UK Next Generation Learning Academy around personalized learning. The middle school schedule has been aligned to allow for students to access more grades and more subjects across, and the development of an accelerated program, again, to try and tailor to the needs, including service learning. And the high school, where the personalization comes to a different level of emphasis as students start looking to their post-secondary experiences. Opportunities for AP courses, dual credit, independent study, and internship. Blended learning. Blended and personalized often get mixed in the same language because so much of the blended learning relies on technology, which also allows for a greater level of tailorization to a student ability. We've tried to separate that out just to make sure that we can define the terms as far as what it means for us. But in the elementary school, we've recently implemented Chromebooks for station rotation in grades 3 through 5 for full implementation of programs like Lexi and Dreambox, and that will be expanded to K through 2 next school year. At the middle and high school, Khan Academy complements our math instruction. Adobe apps have been used to help a series of different subjects bring their learning to life. Compass Learning, again, is a tailored approach that is present in our A school. And you see things like Edmodo and other learning management systems used in different classrooms as teachers play with a number of different tools to try and, again, make sure that what they are doing matches the level of student interest and ability at that moment and not being a one-size-fits-all solution. Performance-based assessment. It's a big umbrella for us. It includes a number of things. At the elementary school, it includes 5th grade gateways, an effort to expand project-based learning across K through 5. And application of engineering is elementary, which is a curriculum for engineering, obviously, and project lead the way. And you see some of those same things moving up. Middle school gateways, performance-based assessment tasks in 6, 7, and 8, expansion of project-based learning, and again, engineering through project lead the way. In the high school, a 12th grade capstone, which is very much a close cousin of the gateway experience. Performance-based assessments intend to expand 9 through 12, except in the courses that we really don't want to put additional pressure on. It's not saying it can't, but making sure that we define where we expect that focus to arise. And again, engineering to be another aspect of that piece. World language acquisition. Being able to implement Spanish grades K through 5 has been part of our plan. It's also present in grades 6 through 8 with the opportunity to earn high school credit. And in the high school, Spanish is available for the minimum 2-year experience for those students pursuing 4-year college enrollment. Other students beyond, but the minimum guarantee is stated there. Digital portfolio. This has been a real hurdle for us, trying to find the right tool that allows us to archive student work, to stay with them over time, and we have spent a great number of hours in conversations and research still trying to look for what that right piece is, and that exploration is going to continue. At the elementary level, Master Connect provides us a good archival tool of student performance in any series of measures and ways. It doesn't allow us to archive or upload student work to say, here's what my writing physically looked like in 3rd grade, but we can definitely archive the quality and strengths of that writing at that time. We need to explore those same tools at the middle and high school level, and the digital badging is a way of archiving Danville diploma skills as well, which can also be done in Master Connect. So we see this in elementary, and we're looking to develop that further in middle and high and being able to identify clearly the ways in which we'll approach that process. Advanced academics. K through 12, you see different options. AP classes, dual credit, independent study, performance-based credit, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. The accelerated program at the middle school, individualized scheduling at the middle as well, which also allows students to take high school classes such as geometry, and a gifted and talented program that remains across our elementary schools. Research and analysis, design and action. These are all components that came from our original plan, and this is, again, clearly defining what they look like today. The challenge with the research, analysis, design, and action was increased because the original goal was to allow teachers to teach outside of their certification areas. That waiver didn't get approved, but that does not prevent us from still being able to create interdisciplinary opportunities for student learning and teaching. And they come through these things. Intercession, which you all are familiar with. We have a new unlisted classroom that allows students who have met their benchmarks on ACT and end of course to experience learning outside of the norm because through a waiver we are granted additional freedom to do so. Well, you see the waiver listed there. The EDGE, which is again a high school program that allows us to take non-credit bearing opportunities to therefore free students and teachers to learn in different ways. Engineering goes across K-12, which by definition is an interdisciplinary approach. Experience Danville, many of us are familiar with from the summer standpoint, is giving kids that same opportunity to play. And project-based learning inherently mixes multiple disciplines. Anytime you take that on, we're given that opportunity to have students mix subject matters in order to demonstrate competency and standard performance. And as the middle grades reinforces its team concept, that inherently promotes interdisciplinary work, because you're essentially giving a group of teachers, here are your students, here's your lunch period, here's where they go to electives, the rest of the day is yours. Communication. 5th grade, we're looking again for students to be able to present their gateways. It is an important skill to be able to stand in front of folks and be able to interact and exchange information. I've been doing it for a number of years. I still can get better, as I'm realizing now I'll dry my mouth. Google Apps for Education allows us to see that same kind of collaboration skills in an online environment. At the middle school, we see the formation of our forensics program, which is a hallmark of the Danville system, and the introduction of our performance-based assessment tasks in a more formalized way. At the high school, again, it's the capstones, our forensics, which needs to continue to have a great emphasis. And this year, we're able to bring back journalism in a way that allows our students to have bi-weekly publication in the Advocate Messenger. So now when our students apply to college, we'll have a great number of them who will be able to list their list of publications in their application, as well as the other skills that other folks may be able to have, which is a very cool opportunity. And we continue with intentional speech development required of all students. Leadership. These are, again, K-12 tests. We provide support for National Board Certified teachers. There's no greater honor for a teacher to earn than National Board Certification status. The Applied Positive Psychology cohort is the leadership cohort I was talking about earlier, that again focuses on the growth mindset, and we've again had everyone from clerk to superintendent participate. We aim to construct a Danville Schools new teacher orientation for hires made beginning for the 2016-17 school year, so that way we bring them into the Danville way. It's just not getting another teacher gig, and we need for folks to understand that, what's expected of them. And we look to explore strength identification tools for students, as we've done this now with staff. Even some of our schools have been doing it across their faculties as well, to some really interesting conclusions. And these are the kind of the tools that you would find: Gallup Strength Finder, the VIA test, so forth. Start to tell us what our kids are good at, who they are as individuals, and that allows us to better tailor instruction for them to develop their pathways to what their future would be. Time, probably the most important resource after faculty when it comes to education. In elementary school, as I mentioned, fluid scheduling for individual student ability. The middle school is revamp your schedule for personalized learning, relationship building, common planning, and intervention. The intervention's a key piece. We often talk about the plan, about making sure we're doing for kids that hadn't caught up yet to where it needed them to be. This builds it into the school day to make sure that that time is allotted for that focus to be provided. And at the high school, the master schedule allows for advisory, edge, intercession, and common planning. A tremendously unique schedule that is unlike any other high school in the state of Kentucky. The arts. Innovation in the Danville schools in the arts began long before our plan was in place. It still remains a true hallmark of what we do that is so rare compared to any other place that you would look. And it began first, you see the investment that was made with that. To find a district that will put a director of arts education and a technical director of arts education as a priority in the system is absolutely tremendous. And from that, you start to see all the things that come from it. Program reviews, which are part of our state assessment system, assess our dance, drama, music, and visual art programs in our course K through 12. And the hardest part I had in this whole presentation was trying to reduce it to a slide because I just didn't feel like that was fair. So as you take a gander at that, I do want to pass out, as I had Jane Dewey provide for us, a much more thorough listing of what all we actually are doing in the arts and how, in fact, it sets a very different tone for the work of our schools. So I'll pass that way. But in summation, exposure obviously is a huge priority. We've invested heavily with some time in arts literacy training, which is for cross-curricular text engagement and an arts performance cycle that allows students to engage in text through a different approach. And of course, the after-school strings program. At the middle school, drama classes have been in place. We essentially have a JV forensics program development, a new makers club, as well as a jazz band. And at the high school, one of the cool things is that we actually have been able to work with the state of Kentucky to establish an arts pathway for career readiness that didn't exist prior to us approaching them to say, we want our students who are involved both on stage and behind stage in art or music to be able to be considered career ready. And they were willing to go along with that and help us develop that program. We're looking to do the same thing with communications so that our forensic students will be able to be considered career ready. If you've ever seen a forensics presentation, it is in fact the visual representation of what everyone says they want in career readiness. For us to be able to figure out how we get kids recognized in that way would be important for us and then any other district that would like to follow our lead. I then want to have a series of schools give some highlights for their work. I would prefer them to do that than me. So if Robin, you want to talk about Jenny Rogers for a minute?
On top of all these other things that we're all doing as a group at elementary schools, Jenny Rogers this year has been challenged to get outside the walls of Jenny Rogers and move beyond just having those high standards and wanting our kids to achieve these things academically. We also want to provide them opportunities, and hopefully they will discover their passions or discover some things they don't like much earlier. And so we've asked all of our teachers to make some kind of outside the walls of Jenny Rogers connection to our community. Hoping that the goal is that they will be much more global thinkers in the future. We already have some partnerships established with Jenny Rogers. Currently listed here, South Christian Church, our service learners. I do want to give a shout out to Mr. Carney. I've been a part of that program for 3 years that it has existed, and it has evolved and changed, and it is a much more seamless process. It is a much more high quality partnership now, and Mr. Carney certainly deserves a lot of credit for that now. Also, Happy Feet, we have a new Admirals Adventure Academy this year, bringing lots of different kinds of programming and these types of opportunities to all of our elementary students. We also have partnerships with the peer tutoring class at Danville High School, and Mr. Little, and Webster Orthodontics is a brand new community partner this year. These are some of the partnerships that were proposed already and have been approved this year. One of our teachers is having a school-wide library drive. We're going to try to get as many of our students a library card. Not all of our students have library cards, and we're fortunate in this community that we have a fabulous library, and we want to have all of our students have access to that and be able to check out books there. The farm to table, I had to go farm, and then trip to the Bluebird Cafe. Some of these things, require extra funding, and I told the teachers, you don't have to worry about that. That's my job. We'll figure out those kinds of things. We don't want there to be barriers, even though there are some hurdles. We'll work through those because we want to provide these kinds of experiences to our kids. Humane Society, always a favorite. Something new, brand new idea this year, Cougars for a Cause. This club will have an emphasis on technology. They're going to partner with different grade levels of students, and they will advertise through a commercial that will be shown in the morning assembly and try to get things on the website and video links out to teachers and parents for whatever the project or the cause is that they're working on that month. We have a choir this year. They have already had their first rehearsal and going well. They're going to do some public performances. Water safety for kids in K2. The thought is that while our older students are taking an assessment in the spring, these guys will be out of the building, and they'll learn how to swim. Family farms, of course, we have lots of agriculture around our community as well. We do have a community garden at Jenny Rogers, but we're going to try to bump that up and take it to the next level. Not just having one garden night, but really trying to bring in some other things to our garden. Fire and water safety, weather safety, and then we already have some things set up with our community arts center where they're actually coming to Jenny Rogers to do a couple of different things, working with different groups. So we're also bringing outside resources into Jenny Rogers. So we're very excited that those are just the ones that have been approved. Not everybody has made a proposal yet, so I told them the longer they wait, the better the project better be. Anyways, we're really excited that these things are coming to Jenny Rogers, and that we think that these types of opportunities, a lot of those touch that affective domain, that we want our students to be, confident in their own shoes, and that when they leave Danville schools, they have lots of experiences and are ready to go.
Yep.
So at Hobbs Elementary, our initiative is to become an art smart school. I mean, we're really excited about that. Some of the benefits that we find from that would be really kind of these are the things that we're wanting to focus on through becoming an art smart school with those initiatives. One is student engagement. We see that it will have an impact on attendance and then also student achievement. We are hoping that through this Art Smart initiative that we will build reading and writing competencies, and then also provide students with real-life applications of their learning through performances and also through having different performance groups come and visit the school. And then also, along with that, is exposure to arts and humanities. A lot of these things students would not necessarily be exposed to on their own. So we're hoping that being an Art Smart school will provide some of these benefits. What that means for us, and we've set kind of year one goals. We know that this is going to be a long process, and not necessarily we're going to do everything this first year. But as far as year one goals, I've got 6 points highlighted, and they kind of intermingle. The first one is to incorporate art-specific vocabulary in the language arts lessons. For example, spelling words. You'll see arts vocabulary on word walls, in Spanish lessons, and a vocabulary list, that sort of thing. The second point there is during PLCs, during our professional learning community meetings, we are going to explore arts connections to existing social studies lessons and units of study. And that can also be brought into our reading program. Our Reading Wonders program lends itself to infuse the arts. So let's say if they are learning about colonial Williamsburg, we might have some sort of performance or some sort of, they might do a program that deals with that. So very hands-on, very performance-based, culminating events. The third component is exposure to the arts through guest performers, assemblies, and field trips. The expectation is to have one arts experience, assembly, or field trip each month for every grade level, K through 5. And just like Ms. Kelly said, as we talked about this to the teachers, I said that's my responsibility to program that, to find the funding for that. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on an application for Danville School's grants. So I'm just trying to find different ways to fund performances to come to the school. We also have Center College right in our community, and so I'm hoping to partner with not only the music department, but also the art department to try to get some connections there. The fourth component is works of art, both student-created and well-known masterpieces will be displayed throughout the building. Okay. So just to liven up and once again, to give exposure to modern or works of art that students may not necessarily see without this initiative. The fifth point is opportunities for students to perform in a musical or theatrical production, a minimum of once per year. Classroom plays, choir concerts, grade level productions, primary production, intermediate production. We're well on our way with this because just last year alone we had 2 productions that were pretty, I feel, for an elementary school on a pretty big scale. We utilized Gravely Hall, and the students just, it was an amazing experience for an elementary student to be able to be on stage and have the full effect of lights and sound and just being on stage. So just to expand on those opportunities. And then the last point there is to provide teachers with professional development opportunities for ways to integrate the arts into everyday lessons. This initiative is a scary thing for the teachers because one thing that I wanted to let them know with this is that I still, reading, writing, math are still at the top of our responsibilities and what we're going to be working towards. But I want them to feel like they can think out of the box and find other ways to teach that, to make learning more meaningful. I just feel like Hogsett is, our students are ready for that type of exposure. It might give them confidence that have ramifications on, like I said, benefit their student achievement and impact their attendance as well. I just want to say too that, you know, the presentation that you're going to see today or that you're seeing today is a very accurate picture of what Danville Schools is doing. As someone new to the district, I kind of needed this. And also the recalibration just in general is a great time for us to, it's a good opportunity to evaluate what we're doing and to set school and district goals. It's been something that has unified my staff at Hogsett, and I would venture to guess that 2 years ago, if you asked what innovation meant for them, they might not have known, but it's clearer and clearer every day. So I just feel like we're heading in the right direction with this, and Hogsett's excited about what this is going to bring.
Before I can begin talking about the leader in me, I have to do a little history lesson. A lot of people don't realize that when this whole idea of district innovation came about 2.5 years ago, there was several of us at Tolliver, teachers had talked about what innovation at the elementary school looked like. And two of the things that we talked about was character development, the whole child, and two was bringing the STEM program. And so several of us had gone to different workshops, and we kept hearing this leader in me. And a lot of us were already familiar with the 7 healthy habits of highly effective people. And so we started doing a little research, and then last year I had the opportunity that we did a book study, and I started sending teachers out to schools that were already leader in these schools. We looked at schools that were in their first year, third year, fifth year. We sent teachers across all grade levels and the disciplines. And then we had the opportunity to go to Bowling Green and look at what some of the schools were doing even at the middle school. Upon seeing that, we saw that was a perfect fit for what we already were doing at Tolliver. It wasn't one more thing. It was doing what we already do better, putting it under one umbrella with a common language as a school of innovation. Some of the things that was the process, and this year we began, it's not a program, that's what I always want to tell people, it's a process. In the first 3 years, you really look at training the staff. We're going to keep that horse in front of the cart, get the teachers grounded with what those 7 healthy habits look like. And then the second year would be more of the student implementation, and the third year bringing in all your community stakeholders, parents. Being who we are, we're probably going to accelerate that timeline a little bit, especially with the help of the board, bringing in the community partners and parents. The interesting thing of going through this process this summer was a few of us were also part of the applied positive psychology cohort. And what that provided us was an opportunity to bring some of the things, and we can explain what some of them are if you don't already know, like right spotting. We start off faculty meetings and PLCs with right spotting. It just sets everybody in the frame of mind when you sit down, positive things are going on in your life and in the school. And WOOT, which is basically a strategy for how do you get past problems that you're having. So if we enter a PLC and we want to go somewhere, we now have a process in which we can troubleshoot that. And then finally, we took the character survey. And what that allowed us to do was something we did at our leadership training was we identified what our 5 to 8 are in our bottom 3. And so we had 26 names, and we're able to look at that spreadsheet. So when we start talking about our healthy habits as adults, being proactive, we can look at, okay, if we're coming into a situation, we know what the strengths and weaknesses are of those other people so that we have very good conversations and get to where we need to in a much quicker manner. Finally, not yet, with the habits, Dr. Luke talked about Mastery Connect. What we're going to do is actually take that one slide that talked about intermediate and primary, and we've already attached the 7 healthy habits. Instead of looking at the skills as isolated pieces, we bring them alive through the habits. Some of those skills can actually apply to 3 different habits. And so it's much more meaningful for the child to see that it's just not a skill in isolation, but they get to see it everywhere. And those habits, they can see it in the classroom, the playground, and the hallways, everywhere it is, your entire curriculum. And then they're able to talk about it and even teach one another. In Master Connect, we'll be able to track them K through 5 as kids, because what we're looking at is if the habit is the one thing that we're measuring, you'll have sub-skills, And those sub-skills are the Danville diploma skills that we've attached to it. I'm almost done with this. Now that I work on that. Discovery Days. Some of you participated in Discovery Days, and we've been doing Discovery Days probably 5 or 6 years. We've gone from 2 different one-week sessions to a one-week session. This past year, we made it into gave students an opportunity to do it student-led. Some of the conversations that we're having this year, and we'll finalize those in the coming weeks, is we're going back to a 2 one-week session. We're looking at the second week of November, and again, the last week of March. Still providing 1 week leadership opportunities for students, but we're wanting to do more of a theme base with maybe one of them be a related arts thing, or something that's physical fitness with a pep brand. We're also looking, instead of doing those 2 days, going 4 days, and having an opportunity for service learning, PBL type opportunities, instead of just the 2 day. As you all know, Discovery Days provides us a lot of those opportunities to have connections with the community. Finally, accelerated reader. As a classroom teacher, when you have a core program and you want to individualize learning, you have a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grader who's maxed out in reading. No other greater resource could I have than a library media specialist to send them up, tie them in, provide them with opportunities to set their own goals, get a more variety of genres that they're reading. And so I could move kids. I'm always going to move kids, but that reading and the love for learning actually benefited those kids more than anything I was going to do in the classroom. One of the other things, as far as we wanted to talk about individualized learning, one of the things that we did at Tolliver this year was we aligned all core reading and math programs at the same time. And what that provides us is the opportunity for a child to move up or down in reading and or math to meet the needs where they are.
Well, when Dr. Luke went through this with us yesterday, I was jealous. We only had 1 slide, Tyler had like 4. So I said, we have to have at least 4 things on our slides. So we had to add one yesterday. But Bank has been really involved in this innovation work, as you know, from the beginning, which I learned last year being new there for the very first time to walk into the School of Innovation, which was so wonderful, and it still continues to be wonderful. So at the end of the year last year, we all felt kind of uneasy, maybe a little frustrated, like we didn't accomplish what we wanted to do. So at our final faculty meeting, I said, let's just brainstorm. What's innovation need to look like at Bank? What have we not been doing? What do we need to start doing? What are your dreams? What should we do? So the staff came up with about 13 bullet points. And we were all excited about all 13 of those. We're going to do all 13 of those. We're going to have our own intercession, our own unlocked classroom. We're going to become a model school. We're going to reach out. We're going to be visiting places. People are going to come here. And it was just a massive, wonderful list. Everything was a magic bullet. It was great. So at the first faculty meeting of this year, just a few weeks later, I said, you know what? We really can't probably accomplish all 13 of these to any really great level. We're going to have to focus on something. So I asked them all to choose their top 3 priorities, their lowest 3 priorities, and then the number 1 thing, if they could pick one that they had to do this year, what would it be? And from that, we were able to distill down our gigantic, wonderful list to these 4 items, basically. PBAT refinement is key. I think that's been kind of a focus and a hallmark of the innovation work at BATE, where we really do performance-based assessment tasks, where we watch the kids perform, present, and inform us of their learning in a unique way that is not paper and pencil. I think that's one of the biggest things, the most important thing that they hold dear, and that I hold dear as well. The kids can demonstrate learning in multiple ways. So we're going to do PBAT refinement, and that is a work we're going to continue with Justin Baffin at UK, part of the Next Gen Learners Academy. He was one of my professors, so I kind of know him just a little bit, and I'm meeting with him, I hope, next week again to talk about exactly how to score the PBATs within the classroom on the content learning. Based on our project-based learning initiative, can we score the projects with PBAT rubrics focused on content, still with adults scoring them, continually throughout the year, but have our big major focus in the spring, each grade level have 1 large PBAT in the evening where we invite our outside scores and have better training and get everybody ready, but those rubrics are just strictly on Danville diploma skills. And those will be, the kids will get to pick from a project they've created throughout the school year and already been scored on content. So they're going to choose one of their projects from earlier in the year, expand it to make sure they present all their Danville diploma skills, And they will be scored then on a rubric focusing only on Danville diploma skills in the spring. That would be our big PBAT assessment. So that's kind of coming as a revamping of PBATs. That's what the staff really wanted to do. That was our number one thing that they thought was the most biggest priority of the year. And blended learning is continuing to be something they always want to focus on. And the reason they want to focus on blended learning is because it helps us to be more personalized with the students. Blended learning, the way that we are employing it over at BOE, consists of direct instruction to one group and other students, well, they're not direct instruction, they have direct instruction to one small group. The other half of the class might be on Chromebooks or computers, working at their own pace through leveled learning, whether it be strictly a content area focus, like our new math textbooks. They now have, they're not textbooks, they're kind of books, not textbooks. They have their own technology program, or Khan Academy, or Reading Plus, or something on their level where they don't have to just be stuck to this one topic. They get to move on ahead or work from behind, depending on the situation. So blended learning, that's how that occurs in our math classrooms. We want to expand that to our language arts this year, and we're working on a program right now to get that going in our 7th grade language arts. So they're very, very intense on getting blended learning going, because that is the personalized piece of our instruction. The early high school culture was implemented way before I came. And it has been so interesting that we are able to really personalize the needs of our students, individualize. Look at this kid, what does this kid need? We're now Mr. Carney transporting one student back and forth 3 days a week here for biology. And it's because she needed to be in biology. It was hard to work it out, but you know, why do you say, well, we can't run a bus for one kid 3 times a week. So we don't. Mr. Carney drives her back and forth every day because she needs to be in that class. And then we have other kids that are really accelerated, need to be certain places. And we're trying to meet those needs. So they really want to have that early high school culture, and I agree. So our kids can go as just taking the lid off. Taking the lid off is what we want to do with that. Intervention schedule. We have our master schedule worked out. So we have 2 opportunities for intervention during the day. But I neglected to tell you this yesterday, but we really should have said intervention and enrichment. Because in order to make it personalized, you can't leave out your high-level learners as well. I mean, you have to have something for them. So they can't just be sitting around while other kids are having intervention. So we have intervention and enrichment. So we are hoping to be able to personalize that as well, meet them where they are, and move them forward, which goes back to the growth piece that Dr. Luke was talking about earlier. So these are kind of our 4 big things that we're focusing on this year at BATE. And we want to just get better and kind of deeper and more refined with all of these, so maybe we can be a model. I asked the teachers if they really wanted to be a model school, because last year I kept getting complaints, well, nobody's coming to visit us, we don't have visitors anymore, nobody's writing us up in the newspaper, we're not in NPR. And I'm like, okay, so is that what you want? And so I asked them, that was one of the 13 bullets, let's become a model school. Well, at our first faculty meeting of the year, we went through the 13 bullet points. I said, so, are we going to be a model school? I thought that would be one of their choices. No, that wasn't it. And actually, one of the teachers said, if you build it, they will come. Why try to be a model school? Just do good work. If you build it, they will come. So let's just focus on doing these things well, and then people will want to come. We'll talk about what we're doing, and that's how you don't just say, we want to be a model school and send out commercials about yourself. You actually do something well, and then people will come to visit you. So that is kind of the focus of our work this year in May.
We are not Lynn Smith. We're going to share the load. He can't be here today, so we're sort of pulled in as the backup. We're working. So a couple of things about the high schools. We have a couple of the positions that show up in the innovation plan, and so we're going to try and go through those and clarify a little bit what is expected of each one. The first one is the interdisciplinary learning designer. That's me. And this year, my focus will be on the EDGE, which is, for those of you who don't know, the sort of individualized learning at the end of the day on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where students get to really drive their own learning. And so we're really trying to put it into the students' hands this year. We've done some student voice surveys and stuff already. Also working on what we call the unlisted course. It's developed as an unlocked course, or some other schools have used it as an unlocked course. Ours is unlisted because it technically wasn't listed in the course catalog, so we had to throw it in late. And so we're doing some cool things with that class that you'll just have to wait and see about. And we're talking about PBACs. And so hopefully with this, we're clarifying exactly what is expected from different classes and where we can use PBACs. We've talked about them, that they're out there. We know that BATE does them, but we aren't really doing them at the high school. Hopefully we can clarify where they can become important. this year.
Okay, so the Pathways coach, just looking at that position and trying to maximize the opportunities for our kids, especially with the Jobs for Kentucky's Graduates program, targeting students struggling to reach ACT benchmarks, students who maybe college is not going to be their next step. So.
We also have teacher assistants, TAs, sort of like they have in college. They facilitate some of the learning where they can't actually provide the curriculum. They just provide sort of the structure and support, especially in, well, they have in engineering, and also for online courses. We offer a lot of foreign languages through KET distance learning that we couldn't offer otherwise, and the TAs sort of manage that classroom, and also credit recovery options for students that have not been previously successful.
Okay, and we've recently been approved for the student engagement coach position, which is new this year. The focus of this position will be on students struggling academically and socially. Students who just aren't making it in the classroom for a lot of reasons. For example, students whose behavior just are a distraction to the learning of that kid, and just kind of helping teachers work with those students, providing some pull-out options for those students, and helping those students really just get the best out of their experience without going through the day-to-day struggle in the classroom that maybe the teacher can't address immediately the way it needs to be addressed.
We also have a technology integration specialist, and that person's going to works with a lot of teachers in a lot of different disciplines. How can we use technology to engage students? He does a lot of work with the Adobe apps and trying to hook the kids with sort of the flashy technology aspects, and then so that they can not be overwhelmed with the otherwise daunting learning tasks in front of them. Also, we've been struggling to figure out what a digital portfolio looks like for us at the high school. So we're exploring a number of options. One of the things that has been brought up is Master Connect. We're looking. So we're not sure where we're going with that, but that's definitely something that we're trying to brainstorm right now.
We are trying to narrow down what it means for a performance-based credit to be awarded to a student because of experiences the student has that may not necessarily fit into what we're doing in the classroom to achieve that credit. What are some other ways, some more creative ways? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of draft the criteria for those credits and making those as meaningful as the credits kids are getting in the classroom.
We divvied these up before, and I'm glad. I just realized that I get intersections, so I'm happy about that. Intersection is a great thing that happens in the spring at Danville High School where kids get to actually do stuff 100%. So we scrap the schedule, the traditional academic schedule altogether, and say this is going to be totally different. And each year it goes around site-based, when are we going to do it, what's going to happen, and people are sort of like, oh, it gets in the way of things, but in the end, everybody's like, oh, this is the greatest thing. And if you took it away, there would be a riot. Kids would go crazy, and I think teachers would go crazy. I think it's a recruiting tool for our school, for students and teachers, because it's the opportunity to teach anything that you like, because we all know there's a lot more to the world than even physics, which is what I teach. So.
I really just want to keep talking about intersection. We are excited about it. We hear kids start talking about intersection, now, and it really is a very valuable experience. Is it the best it can be? No, there's still some work to be done and some tweaking to be done, but it is exciting. It's exciting for teachers too. And of course, the communications pathway. Like Dr. Lick mentioned, forensics is such a strong thing that we have, such a strong program. What are some ways that we can really, let's make it a pathway, because students are getting in and getting so much out of that. So.
Thanks, guys. It's exciting to hear and see shared ownership of the work. That's what makes this sustainable. That's what fuels it and allows for us to all engage from a series of different angles and resources. We now get into more of the nuts and bolts of where we are in some of this recalibration process. So I'll kind of hit these slides. Again, if there are questions as we go through, we can clarify. Some of this is a reflection of what was asked of us by the state, so it's just there to make sure that we have addressed all points that have been raised. The first thing is just a review of the waivers that we do have in place. These are the ones that were originally applied for, some which were approved and some which were not. The first look for an alternative method of measurement, standardized testing, and so forth to get out of K-Prep, so to speak. And with that is something that remains, K-Prep is still something that is part of our lives. Senate Bill 1, 2009 dictates that for all districts in the state of Kentucky. Number 2 and number 3 were about trying to allow for teachers to be able to teach outside of their certified disciplines, certified areas of instruction. And while those were denied, you see from any series of school presentations how we were able to still provide students with those kind of experiences, some in credit bearing and some in non-credit bearing, to make sure, again, we're giving kids those opportunities no matter what rules and regs may have appeared to have tied our hands. 4 was about allowing a classified position to service in many of the same ways as a guidance counselor would. And while that piece was conditionally approved, we have still had a certified person in that role, and therefore that continues to be, the services continue to be provided in the best ways that we've been able to see fit as we've identified the best person for the role, not just the best classification for it. When that waiver was applied for, it also listed the other positions, the interdisciplinary learning designer and the teaching assistants, neither of which required waivers to achieve, and as you see from the other slides, are in place in our schools. The 5th waiver was about performance-based credit. It was also approved. A good part of that is something that is actually in state reg that allows for any school or any district. Our job from our board policy stipulates that's the SPDM's responsibility to define what those criteria are. So we're looking forward to the high school being real clear about everything from if a student runs cross-country, can that count for a physical education credit, to an independent study, and for a student that wants to explore literature in a deeper way, and whether or not they can count for an English 3 credit, what the conditions and criteria would be. And the last waiver was about a funding formula with the intent of trying to be funded based on average daily membership rather than average daily attendance. How that works is right now if I have 30 kids in my class, I buy materials for 30 kids. But if my attendance rate is X percentage to where on any given day I only have 27 kids in the room, the state only funds me for the 27 kids that show up, not for the fact I still have to buy materials for all 30 kids. So we applied for the waiver to try and be funded on all 30. They said it's a really interesting idea. We like the formula, but at this point in time, we're not going to be able to allot you more funds. But we'd still like to know how that's working out, which is kind of a mixed message, but still something that we can pay attention to in hopes of getting state to understand that funding formulas are due for update, most important. This was the waiver that was added last year for all districts of innovation that allowed for a student who had met ACT benchmarks as well as end of course exam benchmarks to have much greater freedom in any remaining course credits necessary for high school graduation. So if we have a student that hits all these benchmarks and still needs English 4, but would rather spend time focusing on deeper levels of AutoCAD analysis, we have the ability now to play within those realms to again tailor that instruction to that student. Cost of innovation. Currently, we have a series of recurring costs that sit at the board level between the positions that are listed. This tallies up to about $440,000. And so as moving forward, as a district, we're going to have to think about how we shoulder that burden and what levels it is to be assigned to. And then there are non-recurring costs that will occur. Non-recurring costs that occur every year, I guess is almost a contradiction in terms. So I should say that differently. There are non-recurring, we're constantly going to be investing in professional development for staff in different ways, to different amounts, and different purposes. This year, we've already spent $10,000 for the UK Next Generation Learning Academy, $16,000 for our leadership cohort. The elementary blended learning devices is a $60,000 investment, and throughout the year, we'll be identifying other important pieces for our staff to focus on and making sure that we find the funds to be able to do so. Corrective action plan. The plan has a series of sections that require a response, and just want to make sure we've addressed all of those. So you series of statements that might sound a little bizarre, but it's if you look at the rest of the report, they line up. 1, we have an innovation leadership team that meets the second Tuesday of the month. We're reported every board meeting. Our plans for innovation will be incorporated into our CDIPs and CSIPs. Those are still required of our schools and guide our work as, again, the compliance with Senate Bill 1. And 3, the recalibration or any amendments will be submitted by Monday. That is our goal, as required by the state to meet corrective action demands. There will be monitoring visits by Katie at the series of the months that you see allotted on the status report that we're being asked to do in February of 2016. We'll participate in all state-led innovation meetings and trainings, and we will aim to be off of probation by June of 2016. So a quick amendment summary. Thank you. Someone recognizes good schoolhouse rock. It's the right spot, right? It's the happy ones. All right, so these, when it comes down to truly what the amendments would be. One, our primary goal is for all students to be on track for college readiness by 8th grade with formative checks in 10th and summative in 11th and 12th. So essentially, we want by 8th grade to know that kids are on track for college readiness, which is again measured by ACT, but predicted by math. We will then still be able to administer the ACT in 10th grade to see where kids are at, and then they will take it statewide in March of their junior year and whatever other times are necessary for individual students to try and reach their college benchmarks with their 11th and 12th grade year, hopefully achieving it as soon as possible. We had mentioned trying to achieve career readiness by the end of 10th grade. Now, career readiness is a bit of a separate conversation, but it requires a 3-course sequence in a particular, we'll call it a trade type or vocational type area with an assessment that follows in order for a student to earn an industry certificate. Most of the industry certificates require a student to be 16 years old. Most of our sophomores may not be 16, so establishing this as a goal by the end of 10th is a particularly difficult task, both by age and we're trying to get 3 courses in with all the other requirements for the first 2 years of high school. Career readiness remains a serious goal for all of our kids because again, it's that package of all kids to be applicable to college. There's lots of folks that apply to college, they're gonna have this GPA, this level of extracurricular or varsity sport and service learning, but not always that many that also have a welding certificate or an AutoCAD certificate or a nursing certificate that goes along with it. So it's still really important for all of our kids. It's just the time at which that's going to hit makes that impossible for most of our students. And as I mentioned earlier, shifting to a focus on student growth, not just about a level of proficiency in the random line that's established, but how much are students moving when they're in the care of the Danville schools. Last one is more of a semantic issue. We want to make sure that Gateway will refer to the end of 5th and end of 8th grade PVATs. DHS needs to explore whether or not there's a difference between capstone and gateway for this reason. When we have programs like Project Lead the Way that are established career and college ready programs, they often end in an exhibition of learning that they've already stolen the term capstone. And we don't want to get folks confused because some kids will be in those programs and will do a capstone. All kids will do an exhibition of learning at the end of their 12th grade year. It may be that some are doing capstones or some are doing gateways, but we'll need for the high school to help us sort out if there is to be a difference in what that would be. In sum, what that does is it eliminates the language of the TPOL so we don't confuse folks and are able to say that at the end of 5th, 8th, and 12th grade, all students have an exhibition of learning, most of which will be a gateway, and there may be opportunities for a specific capstone as well. So it's more of a semantic matter. So the fabric of innovation, to go back. The definition. What is a district of innovation? Again, it's that culture of curiosity that flows throughout. And the self-assessment to make sure to see what we're doing, how it's working with it. Duckworth's quote. When it comes to recalibration, this is a constant process for us. Best ideas, strongest intuitions, and the need to test. Determine whether it's successful, willing to fail, and willing to start over again with lessons learned. So as a district of innovation, the Danville Schools engages in relentless pursuit of 5 goals. Powerful learning experiences, which you seem to be.
Good afternoon, Admirals. We're getting ready for
Very good PA announcements.
tonight. We got one more selection for you, a little bit of anchors away right before the bell rings.
Global preparedness, growth for all, excellence in communication, and important of all community. And you see in the front right there. And that gives us our recalibration.
There you go, and music and everything, it's right there.
Great timing. Yeah, should we stand up?
If I could pull that off, that'd have been impressive, actually. Questions I can answer.
Well, maybe we'll wait for the music to stop.
45 minutes.
There's several verses.